first thing a project team should do before it does any work is to spend some time together to make sure that it has a shared understanding of where it's going. The terms we use that define the destination are the mission, the vision, goals, and objectives. This is the point where most projects tend to fail because it's often taken for granted that everyone knows what the mission is, and that's usually not the case. As I said earlier, accurately defining the problem will determine how you'll solve it. If a proper definition of the problem isn't developed, you're likely to have a solution to the wrong problem. A problem is simply a gap between where you are and where you want to be, with obstacles that prevent easy movement to close that gap. It's important that we understand how to define the problem. Let me share a story that illustrates this. Suppose a person tells you that he's taken a new job in a city that's far away, so he has to move. He tells you, "I have a problem. I have to find a place to live." You ask him what his mission is, and he says, "To find a place to live." "And what about your vision?" And he says, "To find a place to live." And I said, "Well, what's your goal?" And he says, "To find a place to live." And he looks a little bit confused. Well, no wonder he's confused, because all three statements sound alike. He needs to understand the difference between them in order to solve this problem. Keep in mind that a problem is a gap between where we are and where we need to be, or where we want to be. Suppose we were to ask him to tell us where he wants to be when his problem is solved. He'd probably say something like, "I want to have a new place to live in a new city." If you were to ask him, "And where are you now?" he'd answer, "I have no place to live." So we've identified the gap is between having a place to live and not having a place to live. So the problem he's trying to solve is having a place to live. Well, that seems easy until we probe a little bit deeper. Would any place be okay? Or does he have anything specific in mind for his next place to live? So probing a little deeper, you might ask, "What kind of place are you looking for?" And he might respond, "I have to have 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and 2,500 square feet of living space. I also have to have a 2-car garage, a 1-acre lot, and a large family room. I want room for a home office and a basement, and it'd be really nice to have a fireplace in the family room." Well, now we're getting somewhere. The requirements for the home is his vision of what he wants his new home to be. His mission is to find a home that conforms to his vision. Or put another way, the mission of this project is to achieve the vision. And if he does this, he solves his stated problem of needing a place to live that meets the required specifications. Take a look at this graphic that shows the mission, the vision, and the problem statement for this project. So here we see the problem in his case is, "I have no place to live." And then we have a list of must-haves, the wants, and would-be nices. He has to have 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2,500 square feet, a 2-car garage, a 1-acre lot, and a large family room. He's defined that as what this house must be. His wants would be extra room for a home office and a basement. And then he said it would be nice to have a fireplace in the family room. So what's the mission? To find a place to live that meets all of his musts and as many of his wants and as many of his would-be nices as possible. Okay, so that's a nice example, but what does this really look like in the real world? Odds are you'll be handed a project and your boss will say, "Here's your mission," and he won't make any mention of a problem statement. That's typically how it goes. So the first order of business for the project team is to gain an understanding of the problem you're trying to solve, and then establish your mission and your vision and your objectives. The mission of every project is to achieve the vision for the project, and we already went over that. In order to do this, you must work closely with the sponsor of the project and the stakeholders involved to make sure that you have a good understanding of the project requirements. So the mission statement of the project should be written by answering these 2 questions. What are we going to do? And for whom are we going to do it? Once the team has developed its mission statement, the project objectives can be written. Now, the objectives are more specific than the mission statement, and they define what must be completed for the mission to be achieved. An objective specifies a desired end result to be achieved. A task, on the other hand, is an activity performed to achieve the objective. So keep this in mind when writing your objectives. After the objectives have been written, you'll be able to develop your plan to achieve them. And during this planning phase, it's a good idea to assess any risks involved with the project. This is where you take into account Murphy's Law and try to develop contingency plans for dealing with any adverse circumstances that may arise during the course of the project. The simplest way to do this is to get your project management team together and ask and answer the question, what can go wrong? And make a list of all the things that are reasonably foreseeable and have a reasonable likelihood of causing problems for the project. You're not trying to identify every possible risk, just the more likely risks. I recommend using a simple chart during the brainstorming process to document what could go wrong with your project and then contingency plans for dealing with the potential problems. Here's an example. On the left-hand side, you'll list what could go wrong, and on the right-hand side, you'll say, what can we do about it? So for example, we might have a contractor that fails to perform to the specifications of the contract, or you might have equipment breakdowns, or the weather might not cooperate and you have weather delays, or materials might be delivered late. Well, what do? Well, if a contractor fails to perform, we might go with a backup contractor. If the equipment breaks down, maybe we have a plan to rent the necessary equipment to replace our equipment that's broken down. If we have a weather delay, maybe we have to work weekends to make up the time. And if the material is delivered late, maybe there's contract provisions for late delivery, or you might have a secondary supplier. This is just an example of how this simple process works. In the next lesson, we'll look at how to create a risk plan, which takes the risk assessment to the next level. We'll be talking about how to create a comprehensive project risk plan so that you'll be prepared to handle any adversity that comes along during the course of the project. We'll also talk about the work breakdown structure as well as how to schedule the project.